Hello and welcome to the Radio Theatre in Broadcasting House, Central London. We're in front of an audience of hundreds for the latest edition of the Today Debate. Our question, is social media bad for humanity? This is a subject familiar and deeply felt to all of us, not just in the UK but around the world. When we raised it on the Today programme on Radio 4 recently, we were inundated with passionate messages from listeners. We want today to broaden this out beyond the question of a social media ban for under 16s or keeping schools smartphone free, to really look at the trade-offs when it comes to our economy, our culture, our democracy, and yes, our kids. Rather than outline the contours of the debate in this introduction, I'm going to say merely that, as you'll see from our very distinguished panel, we are trying to hit it from all angles. With me on stage here in London, Max Fosh, a YouTuber and comedian. He's got over 6 million followers across his hugely successful social media channels, which include YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Anthony Walker from Tech UK, which is a body that represents the tech industry. Its members include Meta, which owns Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, and also Google and TikTok. Silky Carlo, the director of Big Brother Watch, a civil liberties campaign group, and Justine Roberts, the founder of Mumsnet and also Grandsnet. And joining us on the line from Salford, on the line we can see her, Esther Jai, a campaigner for social media reform, the mother of 16-year-old Brianna Jai, who was tragically murdered in 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our panel. Okay, there is a lot to discuss and only 40 minutes to do it, so I'm going to try and keep this high-paced, high energy and cover a lot of ground. Justine Roberts, is social media bad for humanity?
I think no, not necessarily, but I think the old version of social media, which was all about connection, and big tech still talks about connection, is not what it's about now. It's actually about retention. That's their key model. They want to keep you on and keep your attention. And I think that is quite destructive. I think it's quite destructive for our attention spans. I think it's destructive for kids' developing brains. And I think it's destructive because of what they're showing, which tends to be the most polarized, the most extreme content. So I think, Mumsnet is social media. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's entirely bad. I think the way the business model has evolved to just maximize people's attention and keep them on site means that there are some very bad consequences for humanity.
Silky Carlo.
Well, I share pretty much all of those concerns, to be honest with you, but likewise, I agree it's not bad for humanity. Social media is not bad for humanity per se. There are lots of negative design choices that social media companies make, and certainly I worry about addictive design and opaque algorithms and data collection, massive. So there are lots of negative decisions that can be made, but also enormous positivity that comes together from connecting people from across the world like never before. It's a news source. In the US, it's now the main news source. Most people get their news from social media, and most young people get their news from social media. So there's an awful lot you can do. It's a contact card, it's a news source, it's a way of sharing information and news, citizen journalism. There is so much richness that you can get from social media, but of course there are risks as well, and it's about what the best way to manage that is.
Max Fosh.
I do not believe that social media is kind of the worst thing to happen for humanity, but as you know, Silky and Justine have outlined there are definitely problems that need to be addressed by the social media companies and also users as well, understanding what is being put in front of you and acting accordingly. However, I genuinely believe that social media for a young person it's fantastic to be a young person right now. With social media, you have opportunities, you don't have gatekeepers in order to try new things, experience areas of business and culture that you previously would not have had access to. And so I think there are both many positives, but of course some negatives as well.
Esther Jai from Salford, what's your sense of whether social media is bad for humanity?
I think that there are good points about social media. I can really accept that, but I think that it is completely changing humanity, from relationships to mental health problems to the ability to focus. And also we know that even though we're more connected than ever, young people are lonelier than ever. Obviously, social media companies, just to echo what everybody else has said, are addictive by design, and that's how social media companies make the money that they do. I think also that tech just moves quickening legislation, and with the onset of AI, like, this is really concerning. And this is why I'm campaigning, and I would really like to see the government to act quickly before it does get more out of control.
Well, just before I bring in Anthony on that starting question, I just want to be clear about your, and transparent, Esther, about what you're campaigning for, so we all know. What are the specific calls that you're making? We'll come to the tragic way in which you came to these issues as a parent a bit later on, but what are the specific things that you're calling on the government for as a campaigner?
So I'm calling for a phone-free education. So I would like the government to bring in a statutory ban of phones in schools and to provide support for head teachers. Also, I do back a social media ban for under 16s.
Okay, Anthony.
Well, as we heard, there are certainly kind of pros and cons for the case for social media. But I mean, whether or not it's good for humanity, I'm not convinced that that's the question that kind of most parents are concerned about at the moment. I think their concerns that we're sort of hearing and that are coming through at the moment are much more kind of day to day. It's about, are their children safe online, and are we getting the balance right in terms of the way in which, and the role that social media plays and that digital technologies play in children's daily lives and in families' daily lives. And I think what we're hearing now, I think, from parents, not just in this country, but from around the world, is a sense of they feel that things are a bit out of balance, and I think they're looking for some help. And I think that's the question that we really sort of can focus on, rather than these big existential questions. Maybe there are some practical things that we can do to address those parental concerns and think about how we continue to shape this online world in a way that does work for people, that works for kids, that works for parents, and hopefully does work for humanity as well.
You're a parent, as well as someone who lobbies on behalf of tech companies. What's your policy at home?
My experience of sort of domestic digital life with children is the same with parents all over the country. We try to put some restrictions around digital use. We try to direct, and we also try to make time for non-digital time, time that's not online. But as lots of parents will say, it's a bit of a daily battle, and I think that's where, for a lot of parents, there's a sense of it feels a bit out of balance at the moment. And I think there's genuine questions about how we correct for that.
Okay, we're going to come back to children and parenthood in a bit. Max, I want to pick up on something you mentioned straight up front, which is you said it's a great time to be a young person, and you kind of frame that in terms of economic freedom and opportunities. In the old days, you had to go through these tedious people called journalists, curators, gatekeepers, and so on. In economic terms, has social media been a kind of boon and a benefit for your generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to give you some context, I became a YouTuber and I got into content creation because I didn't get a job at the BBC.
Oh, sorry about that.
I mean, to be fair...
Did I get that job?
Yeah.
To
give some context, I was applying to be a radio presenter on BBC Radio Newcastle, and I think they heard my posh dulcet tones and thought, no, thank you. So I do understand the reason they said no. But it's, YouTube in the last 4 years has paid out over $100 billion to creators, and it has been transformative for so many creatives and people who are looking to, make their passion a business. The creator economy in the UK is growing very, very quickly. So much so, Amal, you are joining the creator economy yourself and saying goodbye to the BBC. And so I just find it to be a very, very positive thing for anyone who's looking to go into business to back themselves, to go on their own. Now that is a different conversation to when it comes to kind of protecting children online, which I do think is very, very important. But I just love the opportunity that YouTube brings and content creation brings, because ultimately you talk about these algorithms. I see algorithms as people. If people like your stuff, then it'll be showed to more people, and then more people will see your stuff. And so often I think the conversation about algorithms is very abstract and spooky and scary because we can't quite understand it and wrap our heads around it. From my perspective, I just see algorithms as people. If one person likes your video, then another person will also like it, and then it will snowball from there.
Would you also distinguish, Max, between bits of social media that are good and beneficial and pro-democracy and pro-economic gains and other bits that aren't? For instance, I noticed in checking you out before tonight started that you're not very active on Twitter X.
No.
Why?
I don't find it to be a particularly positive platform, and I've found that over the last couple of years. And as a result, I've taken myself off of the platform. Not actively. I just don't post on there. I don't look at it. I don't use it as a user. And that was just because I didn't find it to be particularly positive. And what I think, to give an example, I think that in 2021 I ran for London Mayor, right? Because I wanted to get young people to vote in this country. We have very, very low voter turnout.
How did you get on?
I came 19th out of 20. But to be fair, my main manifesto point was don't vote for me, because I just wanted to have a horse in the race and to kind of have a storyline that interested young people in order to get people to vote. Unfortunately, I found out subsequently that they do not collect voter data for demographics at the London mayoral election, so I couldn't have my aha moment. But it was an example of social media allowed me to do something like that, to exercise my democratic rights, to stand an election, and also bring about an interesting cause.
And it lowers the barriers to entry. We'll come back to that in a moment. Justine, you're a digital entrepreneur. You've got, people in journalism. Is there a sense in which some industries have collapsed and come under huge strain, like traditional journalism maybe, but others have sprung up? Mumsnet makes money. You've got finances based on monetizing attention, so it can't be all bad.
Yeah, we specifically, it's not all bad. I didn't say it was all bad.
Sure.
We specifically do not try and just show people what they want to see. And I think that is how we differentiate ourselves, and that is because we are mission-driven and we were here to make parents' lives easier, not worse. And people do occasionally write to me and say, can you ban me from the platform, because I am quite addicted. But they're addicted because of the amazing threads and content and the window into people's lives you can see on Mumsnet, rather than me constantly showing another video or another piece of content that exactly ticks the box of their outrage or their particular, we have a default as humans. We never want to, we have a default that we will keep watching the same thing. And tech companies know that. And they've built algorithms, which I do think are quite scary, actually, when you really go into under the bonnet and see what they're doing, to keep us down the black hole of their content. And, young people, I appreciate the ability to make money, but they also say, when they're surveyed, they wish they'd spent less time down in this black hole of content, and they wish they had, and they will, by the way, keep their own children off, and they will start later.
When people come to you and say they're addicted, please ban me, how do you respond?
Absolutely, of course, because we're here to make your life easier. So we will put a ban
Even if it
on
costs you money?
Yeah, well, we are a purpose-driven company. We're in a fortunate position that we don't have a load of baying private equity or shareholders or whatever telling us to make profit at all costs. But also, Amal, it's about the long term, not the short-term buck. Long term, we're really dealing in trust. So we need to keep our users' trust. So if we just keep them addicted and ignore the fact that we're making them miserable, then ultimately we're not doing our job and they don't trust.
Anthony, just on the economics of it, is one of the arguments that you make to people in Westminster and Whitehall that the economic and commercial and fiscal gains of the creator economy and social media are actually quite big, and therefore we often talk about in the media the big companies, the sort of Googles and the Facebooks and so on. Actually, for quite a lot of people, social media is just a way in which their business can grow through clever marketing.
Yeah, up and down the country, there are huge numbers of small companies who absolutely rely on social media to promote their product, promote their shop, their restaurant.
Literally millions of different little companies.
Yeah, and actually, in terms of consumers understanding the choices available to them in terms of products and services that are around them, I think it's been incredibly democratized. It's provided an incredible channel for all sorts of companies to go to market. And I think there are lots of consumers who are quite sophisticated about almost kind of feeding their algorithm on the things that they're really interested in, and using it as a source of getting really good local information about things that are available to them in their neighborhood and so on. So I think it can be a really powerful force across the economy, and I don't think anybody wants to completely uninvent social media. I think there's a challenge about how we get the balance right, but I don't think people want to sort of step away from it completely.
Esther, are you sympathetic to that idea that when we talk about social media, we often talk about big companies and the trillionaires in or trillionaire companies in Silicon Valley, but actually for most people, Esther, maybe a small business, maybe your bike shop in Hertfordshire, wherever it might be, actually social media is a really useful tool to have a free bit of marketing which you can control to market to a niche audience and try and generate interest in your business.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I am on social media, and I use social media to promote the campaigns and to promote the work that we do at Brianna Jai Legacy Project as well. I think that For me, the focus is children, and we know that children are spending up to 35 hours a week on social media. They're not making money. This isn't beneficial for them necessarily, and this is the equivalent to a full-time job. All the while we're lining the pockets of multi-billionaires. And I just think that essentially this is child slave labour.
Okay, we'll come back to that very provocative phrase in just a moment. Silky, can I just pick up one point that Max made about algorithms being people? Do you look at the last 15 years of social media, Silky, and think it has lowered the barriers to entry, it has given everyone a voice, and on balance, it's been better for Democrats than it has for authoritarians?
It's hard to make that judgment, but you can definitely say that social media has the potential to be a democratizer. We have more access to information than we've ever had before, disintermediated. We get it straight from source. We can see, even from people in Iran, what's happening right now. We can see, people's opinions and experiences in a very immediate way as well. And we can reach people that we haven't been able to reach before and connect with people. So when we're talking about things like bans, we have to be mindful of that this is an incredibly powerful thing. It has to be harnessed in the right way. There's no question about that. But we're talking about something that has the potential to really empower people and connect people to digitally socialize like never before.
How do you think about the idea of and what's your position on a social media ban for under 16s?
I'm against a social media ban enforced by the government for under 16s. It won't work is the primary reason that I'm against it. It won't keep under 16s off social media. What it would do is mean that for all the 68 million internet users in the UK, we would need to have digital ID to go online or a biometric check to go online. That's a very serious thing. And I think there are lots of unintended serious consequences that would come from a government-imposed ban for under 16s. It's the right question to ask. What do we do about the addictive nature that some parents are reporting? And what do we do about the ills of the way that people are using devices, for sure? It's the right question, but it's the wrong answer. And I understand that it's well-intended, but there is certainly not a consensus around this, not just civil liberty groups like mine, but also over 40 children's rights groups, including the NSPCC, are against a government-imposed ban.
And they've talked about the danger of sending kids, as it were, from relatively, quote, safe, unquote, places to places that are somewhat less safe. Look, we want to try and model civil disagreement in a good way on Radio 4. Let's try and do that. Esther, can I just ask you to pick up directly on what Silky said? Won't work and you'll have unintended consequences.
I think, firstly, there's different ways of verifying identification, and I think that I agree that we need to look into this and we need to make sure that this is done correctly. With regards to it might push young people into different areas of the online world. One of Brianna's killers had been accessing the dark web, so this is still, they still can do this. And I would go as far to liken social media to a gateway drug. So Brianna, when she was alive, she was self-harming, she had an eating disorder. She really struggled with her mental health, and it was only after she passed away that I found out she'd been accessing really harmful content and forums online that was encouraging her to do so. I don't know where that would have ended. I really struggled to help her through this. I didn't understand what she was going through because I wasn't brought up in the online world. But yeah, children still have access to the dark web, and I think that this is something that really needs to be regulated, and maybe this is a focus that Ofcom should be driving towards rather than focusing too much on social media companies.
But Esther, when Silky says, and it says it as a parent as well as a civil liberties campaigner, a ban won't work, what persuades you that a ban can work or will work?
Do you know, I think a ban sends a very clear message that social media is not healthy for children. It gives parents the ability to prevent children from going onto social media until the age of 16. And I'm only one voice, but I speak on behalf of many bereaved families and also over 200,000 parents who wrote to their MPs the other week in support of a social media ban. parents are at the end of their tether and they just do not know how to protect the children online.
Okay.
It just gives parents that extra strength, and it just shows that actually it's not healthy.
Justine, I know you're concerned about addiction. Do you think that's a real problem?
I do think it's a real problem. I think, kids are showing all kinds of behaviours that are like the behaviours of addicts. One user on Mumsnet described letting their kid having their phone in their bedroom was like letting a crack addict take crack upstairs. That's what it's like. It's a daily parental battle. And the reason why a social media ban will work is because it will change the default. Right now, the norm is that kids have phones. On average, they start at age 10 in this country, and it's very difficult to control what's on them. We actually have produced a phone which can allow parents to easily control, but there aren't many out there, and usually what people are getting are their hand-me-down phones. If you make the majority, or even if it's not perfect, and no ban will be perfect, the alcohol ban isn't perfect. We don't say to kids, we might as well give up on alcohol because some of you can get booze. It's not going to be perfect, but it will change the norm. And the norm at the moment is that they have phones, and the parent who disagrees is in danger of socially isolating their kids. They get an awful lot of pressure for being the odd one out. And this is why I think it can work. It can also work, by the way, because tech companies can target very accurately based on age. They say they can't, but if you look in Australia, where a ban has been put in place, they manage it really well because they know so much about us. They know an awful lot about what you're posting online, what you're looking at online. They can tell what your age is.
Silky, could I just ask you to respond to those 2 points? One about changing the default and that having, as Justine says, a power in itself. And the other, Esther's point, that a ban sends an effective message. And sometimes you need the heavy hand of legislation rather than just the soft pressure of social stigma to send that message.
Yeah, I understand that. I think there are other ways of sending that message, though. And I think if you want to send a message that we need to have a better relationship with technology and with the internet, especially for children, that's a message that I think everyone can unite behind. I think what we don't want to do is rush to one solution, proposed solution, that, as I said, unfortunately, I really don't think it would work, and that has many other unintended consequences. It's important we get this right, because let's bear in mind as well, we're just talking about social media for now. We're on the brink of enormous technological change. If we don't get dealing with kids on social media right, how are we going to deal with virtual reality and AI and all the other technologies that young people are going to be living their lives through many different lenses of technology? The only way that you can deal with this really is to support parents and children to have a better relationship with the technology. And at the moment, for all of the letters that are going to MPs, and I know they are, MPs I've spoken to have told me about it, only a minority of parents actually use software controls to monitor and manage how their children use social media and screen time. So there are lots of different things that you can do with also controlling the device itself. Why is the device in the bedroom? So you can start with the device. How is the device used? Where is it used and when? And then what activity is done on the device? And there's all kind of software you can use on the platforms, also on the devices, Google Family Link, Apple Screen Time, things that you can do to manage that. You can't simply ask the government to solve those domestic issues for you. It won't work.
Why not? We ask the government to solve all kinds of issues around kids. When we think kids are harmed or it's unhealthy for them to have stuff, cigarettes, tobacco, social media is up there. Why don't we just accept that we ask the government to do it?
I mean,
it's not a family. You cannot expect us to out-parent business models.
Yeah, likewise, there are, I hope I'm not just speaking for me and my own social circle, but certainly we did drink and smoke before the legally allowed ages. And
you're definitely not speaking for yourself.
Yeah. Okay, good.
It won't be perfect, but it'll change the default.
So it would change the default, but it won't actually work. And so what it would do is also have an impact on everyone else in the country. Now, let's bear in mind, digital ID checks for all of us, everyone in this room, everyone listening, to go on social media is not consequence-free. The thing that makes social media so democratizing and empowering right now is that it's free and open for anyone to use and to connect with anyone else. And we've got lots of examples of people speaking truth to power, whether it's the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, all kinds of very important social movements. And for young people, and taking action on climate change and these sorts of things, because they feel comfortable to do so, because they don't have to have basically their passport alongside a set of their own views.
It's happening in Australia now. There is a ban. They don't have digital ID checks. The tech companies are
Yes, they do.
remarkably capable of being able to just work it out because they see what you post. And,
No,
they see
there's-
and a lot of people have registered with them.
No,
they
so
have a lot of
there's two
information.
ways. There's two ways that you show your age on social media. Either you show an ID or you have a biometric check. That's typically how it works. They're both forms of ID. And if you fail the biometric check, which lots of people do, the only way you could then prove your age is to show an ID. So it's ID checks for the
Let me
internet.
just bring in Anthony on this point. Anthony, what's your position as Tech UK and also your position as a parent on whether or not there should be a ban? In principle and in practice.
I mean, I share Silky's concerns about the unintended consequences
Which
of
are
the ban, which I really worry about. If you're only banning a certain limited number of platforms, then that behaviour is going to go somewhere. So there's going to be a displacement effect. So I think real questions about what do children actually do? Where do they go? What other services do they go to? Do they go to smaller platforms, less regulated platforms, plus platforms that have less resources in terms of really established kind of parental controls and things. Also questions about, are you at risk of particularly pushing more vulnerable children to riskier places where they could be at more risk? Now, the opportunity that we have, though, is there is a real live test happening in Australia, and I think we do have an opportunity to look at the evidence and see what really happens in Australia. What are those displacement effects? What are the workarounds that young people develop? Or do we see a really positive change in behaviour that you kind of go, oh, okay, this does seem to be working. So what I'd like to see us do is take the time to actually look at what's happening in Australia, take a proper deep look, and then determine whether or not it's the right thing to do on top of the UK's Online Safety Act, which really is a kind of world-leading regime for thinking about a risk-based approach to online safety. And nobody's saying that there isn't more to be done. I think the question is, what is the right thing to do?
Go on, Justine.
This idea that it's going to force kids into the darker corners of the webs really misunderstands why kids are on social media. They're there because their friends are there. If you can change the default and get the friends off and allow parents the confidence to say, no, you're not having a friend because the government, by the way, says it's bad for you, then there will be a few. Look, it's not going to be perfect.
But I would challenge just that, are they just going to stop being online, or are they going to start using other services to connect? Young people, I think, will always want to connect with each other.
Well,
the internet provides a tool for them.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
I think we have to look at the reality rather than just maybe what we hope might happen. Let's look at what really happens.
The evidence. This comes out of tech companies all the time. They'll go to the darker web. Show me the evidence.
Well, that's exactly where
I'd
argue that there's an opportunity to look at what's really happening in Australia to see what the impacts are.
Definitely look at that. Max, where do you stand both the principle and the practicality? Should it be banned in principle, and will it work?
The big question I have is, we're talking about social media bans. What does that mean? Are we talking bans on certain platforms like Snapchat? Or are we talking bans about watching gardening videos on YouTube? Like, it's such a broad term. It's kind of saying, like, should we ban entertainment? I don't think it's particularly helpful when we're having kind of an informed debate about something like this, because we're not being clear enough as to what we actually mean by that. And Justine, you mentioned about, like, if it's not the dark web, you mentioned that kids go on social media because their friends are there. And if you ban that, then yes, if your argument is that they won't go to the dark web, then they will be ostracized because their friends are there. And so then they will not be able to formulate connections. And although you mentioned that,
No, they're ostracized now because most people, well, pretty much everyone is there. But once you have a critical mass of people not there, you're not the weird guy anymore. You're not socially isolated. And yeah, you may actually end up talking to people in real life. There are parents putting landlines in to make this happen. Now, that sounds like we're going backwards, but actually in many ways we're going forwards, because 61% of parents on Mumsnet think their kids are addicted. And they also are a similar number, slightly more, are worried about their kids' mental health. These two things are not unrelated.
Max, when the Australian ban came into force, I interviewed a couple of Australian teenagers about the ban who are protesting against it. And they said, very interestingly, they're, I think 12 or 13, maybe a little bit older, they were saying that their rights were being violated because they've got a right as kids to have access to social media, which to some people who grew up before social media might sound weird. But then if you live in a society where you've been used to social media and lots of other people around the world that you might know and be connected to are on social media, there is a sense in which lots of young people might feel aggrieved, right?
I'm sure they do, and there is an element of that which I probably do agree with. A lot of people listening right now will be listening on BBC Sounds, which is a form of social media. They'll be using their smartphones. I mean, we heard Gabby Badenoch recently, the leader of opposition, talking about, oh God, don't you hate it when you suddenly look down, you've been doom scrolling on Instagram for an hour. I'm like, if the leader of the opposition is talking about that as part of then that is pervasive within our society just generally.
I guess she would say that she, as an adult, can decide to waste her time, but as a society, we need to make decisions about what. Why are you laughing? That wasn't meant to be funny. But we need to make decisions about what children should do. Esther, I just want to bring you back in, Esther, on that point, because we talked a lot about the dark web, and you talked about how Brianna's killers access the dark web. But is your sense that when Max says, what do we talk about social media, you think, A, look at Australia, because they've decided what a ban could look like, and B, do you feel, Esther, that we just need as a society to have a big, broad message that this is doing harm and therefore we need to intervene?
I think that we do need this message that it is doing harm. I think that I made a few notes before because I've, as part of Brianna Jai Legacy Project, we go to schools and we offer talks to parents. So we'll go to primary school and every single parent from that school will be invited along, where they can learn about software controls and learn how to manage the children's screen time better.
The stuff that Silky was talking about, yeah.
Yeah, the uptake of parents, it's about 20 at the maximum from a whole school of children. So this is why we need to really show that this is harmful. And I think that the only way by doing this is by getting the government involved. And just to say, Brianna was completely addicted to social media. The amount of battles that I used to have with her, trying to get her away from it and to live in the real world. It was shocking. I'd end up with holes in the walls. She was absolutely addicted. This is what parents up and down the country are going through. I have so many parents that message me to let me know that they're going through exactly the same thing. And I just think that a ban is the only answer. Also, I think that France are now going to ban social media for under 15s, and Spain are going to ban social media for under 16s. So I just feel like in the UK, we are just so far behind so many other countries in the world.
And Anthony, a lot of people make the comparison between tech and, in a previous era, big tobacco. And they say, in the end, people said, turns out the evidence is accumulated, tobacco does cause cancer, we should make an intervention. And if adults still want to do it, you can do it, but it's regulated and it's taxed. What's the difference here?
I don't think anybody's saying that that we shouldn't be trying to create an online environment for children that is different to the online environment we have for adults. So I think there is a broad recognition that that's the journey that we're on. And we've seen, we've a significant piece of legislation passed in the UK. It took a long time to get passed, but it's now in force. We've got a world-leading regulator who's tasked with implementing that regulation. And I think the question is kind of how we build on that, how we continue to create that earlier experience of the online world in a way that enables children to get all the positive benefits from it, but also develop the skills that they're going to need as they enter into this digital world. Because the digital world that they're inheriting is one that's going to require them to be quite sophisticated.
Of course, but isn't one of the challenges that you've got, frankly, that a lot of these companies, they might be extraordinary companies led by great entrepreneurs and innovators and fantastic engineers. A lot of them are hated. I mean, there's a lot of them are really hated and not trusted, and there is perhaps a prevailing feeling that there's an irony here because you might not trust them but still use their services to promote your business and to look up stupid videos of people doing yoga or whatever it might be. Not that all videos of yoga is stupid, but that tells you about my history of on YouTube. But you know, the trouble is a lot of these companies are simply not trusted to, as it were, mark their own homework, and that makes it hard for you to move forward, and that's why a lot of parents get behind the idea.
Yeah,
that
and
companies
but
will do it,
we're not
government
asking them
must.
to mark their own homework because they are regulated in the UK. They have to demonstrate that they've really thought about if you run a service where there's a reasonable expectation that a child is going to be accessing that service, then you're required by law to think through all of the risks that child could face, and then demonstrates them to the regulator that you've mitigated for those risks. And that's the regulatory environment that we now have in place. It's been in place for about a year. And I think we're at the start of that journey. Lots of companies have responded, I think, really positively to that. There will be more that we need to do as technology changes and behaviours change and norms change. And technology companies got a role, the regulators got a role, the government's got a role to make sure that the regulation kind of keeps pace with change. But we in society have got a role to play as well, both as parents and members of society, to make sure that we're getting the norms right as well. So I think it's a collective effort.
Justine, you convinced?
I think asking big tech to create a social media environment that's healthy for kids is like asking big tobacco to create a child-safe cigarette. That's what you're asking them to go against their very business model. And so I completely agree with Esther. I think, you know, government, we need government. This is a collective action problem. It's exactly what we have a government for. And I think it's unrealistic to expect the tech companies to suddenly show a huge amount of responsibility.
Silke, are you worried that where Justine's argument ends up is basically state-sanctioned censorship?
I'm afraid it is. And it's interesting what you say about the Australian kids, because they're right. They're experiencing censorship. And I also don't think it sets them up for the real world. You know, on your 16th birthday, you go and get a Facebook account. You know, you have to show your ID.
Now it's your 10th birthday.
Well, then,
Well, is it better to have it at 16 or 10 when you've had time to mature, where your brain's matured a bit?
well, I think that
There's
this
a
is
cliff edge
why.
wherever you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is why it's so important for families to make those choices. And I'm not suggesting this is some kind of soft option. I think that's the tough option. I think it's the robust option when a family says that they show their kids and teach their kids and also model the behaviour. And as we discussed, Kemi Badenoch clearly had some issues doing that in her own house, that we have to model good internet use and social media use, rather than parents also scrolling aimlessly on their phones and passively scrolling. It's the same as with sugary food, or indeed with cigarettes and alcohol. The whole point is that you have to show and teach young people how to use these things in a wise way. You cannot transplant that responsibility onto government. They won't be able to do it. It just won't happen.
But we do with cigarettes and alcohol. That's exactly what we do.
No, this is exactly my point. You can have a regulation, okay, but at the end of the day, the relationship that a person forms with that thing, and we are comparing apples and oranges here, but the lifelong relationship that they'll form with that thing is through their upbringing and the guidance they've been given from their parents. It won't be because of a piece of legislation in a bill that they don't know about and don't understand. The reality is, if the kids are there, they will circumvent it. They will go onto the social media sites they want to go onto anyway. The conversation really needs to be about how can we show young people what a healthy relationship with technology looks like.
Okay, we're coming towards the close. I want to get a thought from both of you about how to build a better future. Max, I don't know, listening to you, I get the sense you feel that you can't really have the good without the bad or the bad without the good, that the reality of technology is it's a dual-use world. What would you like to see us do now to get the best of social media? It's the same question to all of you. How do we get the best of social media and minimise the worst?
So I definitely, I agree with a lot of things that, Justine and Esther say. I do think that there should be elements of schooling. Like I think it should be phone-free education, absolutely. And that comes in from educators and parents lobbying, being like, this is when you are, have your phone. This is when you do not have your phone. But I also then look at things like the Online Safety Act, which is still relatively early doors. We don't know the success of it, but I'm not 100% sure how successful that is going to be, because of various different circumvention that people will do. In order to, that's a very big question about how do we get the best out of social media. I think that there should probably be increasingly lobbying from the government on the tech companies to be, although, you know, Anthony talked about they already do this, I think that they should really put their money where their mouth is and, you know, have genuine ramifications if they do not. And so I think that comes on the onus on the government to then go to the
That's what they're planning to do with the online safety. Esther Jai, how do we get the best of social media, minimise the worst?
I think, as I've been saying all the way through this, that we do need to ban social media for under 16s. It's a brilliant tool if it's used correctly. However, there's so much misinformation, terrible comments, harmful content, and it's just not a place for children.
Justine Roberts.
I would completely agree with that. And I say for adults, I think we get the best by limiting our use. So we should actually absolutely enjoy it, but realise that you are a pawn in a big tech experiment and they're grabbing your attention.
Aren't you a rational agent doing what you want to do with your time?
Yeah, totally. We're rational and addicted. So how rational are you when you're addicted? I don't know. So I would use time limits and I try and do that on myself. Otherwise, I go down that doom scrolling black hole.
As we all do.
Everyone else.
Yeah, I can't wait when we're finished to check on social media to see what people make of what they've been hearing. Anthony, how do we get the best of social media, minimise the worst?
I think we have to continue to focus on creating an experience for children that's different to the experience that adults have. I think we can continue to look at some of the features of some of the platforms that may be overly compelling for young people. And you might say, okay, well, we need to rent, but that's all possible in the framework of the legislation that we have. I think we need to kind of just keep iterating. This isn't ever going to be a sort of fix and forget. We're always going to have to focus on getting this.
It's a process. Silky, final thought briefly. How to get the best of it and not the worst?
Keep it open, keep it free of censorship, and give people power about how they use it and how they allow their children to use it.
Okay. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you and indeed to our panel. Before we do that, I'm going to say a huge thanks to our tech team. They are Clive Painter, John Boland, Darren Wardrobe and Mark Mortimer. And our producers were Ollie Stoneley, Sinead Heekin, Victoria Gardner, and the executive editor was Owenna Griffiths. I sort of want, in the 20 seconds we've got left, to do a quick poll. Who here supports a ban on social media for under 16s? About 60-40. And keeping phones completely out of schools? About 90-10. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our magnificent panel. Thank you so much.